Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. I'm super excited that you guys are here. So if you want to know how to actually set
Hello,
up
hello,
a
hello,
trust
everyone.
and the steps that
Welcome
you
to
need
the
to
Wealthy
take
Trustee
when you're in the
webinar.
right
I'm super
place. I do have a short presentation for you guys, so we're going to dive right into the presentation, but allow me to introduce myself. My name is Christina Yvette. I am a trust strategist. So I have been a trustee for 10 years now, and I'm going to teach you more on a standpoint of trusteeship, right? How to actually set up this trust so that you can operate it efficiently and effectively. So we're going to dive right in. And then after I go through this short presentation, then I'm going to open up the floor for Q&A. So if you guys have any questions based off of the information that I go over tonight, I would love to answer all of your questions, okay? So let's dive right in. And where are you guys tuning in from? So drop your state in the chat. I currently am in Atlanta, Georgia, but yesterday I was in Miami, Florida. So where in the world are you guys located? Put it inside of the chat, please. And as I mentioned, we're gonna dive right into the presentation. Okay, let's see. Let me check the chat real quick. Okay, Washington State, Louisiana, New Jersey, Philippines, Philly, Connecticut. I love it. I love it. I love it. So we are all over the US, and some people are international as well. So as I mentioned, I have been a trustee for 10 years now. The way that I got into trusteeship was by way of real estate. Okay, so I have been investing in real estate for the last 10 years as well. I started an a real estate investment company, and I started flipping houses. And when I started flipping houses, my mentor told me you need to put those properties into a trust, especially that very first property that I invested in. And so I took heed to what he was saying, and I set up a trust, and I have been operating within trusteeship ever since. Okay. So I'm a mom of three, I'm 35 years old, and I run this brand called 7 Ways to Wealth. So I'm a founder of the brand. So, what you guys are going to be learning today is the fundamentals of trusteeship. You guys are going to be learning what a trust entity is, the steps that you need to take, how to actually transfer the wealth that you're actually creating now, and about asset protection, okay? So as I mentioned, right, you're going to learn about a trust, right? And so my first question to you is, what is a trust entity, right? And a lot of people, they have heard the term trust, but they're not sure really what it is. Or they've heard it and they know that it is like a business, right? And so what a trust is, it's an entity just like you. So out here in society, you are also operating in society as an entity as well. So when you operate in society, you operate with your name and your social. So with the trust is also going to be operating in society with its name and with its 9-digit number, which we call an EIN number. Okay. So it's very similar to a business. So that means that if you're an entity and a trust is an entity, the trust can do anything and everything that you can do as a natural person, which is extremely powerful. Just imagine you being able to replace yourself with a trust, and now you can operate privately. Okay. So with this trust entity, the way that it comes into existence is by way of a contract. So that means that you have to set up a contract in order for this entity to be created, okay? Now, there's two sections to the contract that I want you to know of. The first section is a declaration, okay? So that's where you're declaring what it is and you're declaring what it is not. So you're declaring that you are setting up a trust in this contract and that you're not setting up a joint venture, a partnership, an LLC, a corporation, or any other type of entity, okay? Now, the next part is the actual agreement or indenture where you have the terms and conditions or what we call the bylaws, right? And so those bylaws have all of the provisions inside of the trust for how you actually want this trust to be operated, okay? So it's very important for you to be able to put the right provisions inside of the trust because that's what's going to actually protect your assets, okay? All right, so let's continue on. So now that you guys know that the trust is a contract, now you need to know the parties inside of the contract, okay? So the first party is the grantor. That is the creator of the trust. So other terms that you might hear is trustor or settler, okay? And so that's the person who creates the trust for the benefit of someone else. And usually they are the person who's going to place the first asset into the trust or donate or give something into the trust, okay? The next person is the trustee. That's the controller of the trust. So that is the party who is going to be controlling the assets that are inside of the trust, and they're going to be operating the trust on a day-to-day basis. So they do all the hiring, the firing, they manage the trust funds, and they manage the properties that are inside of the trust. And they do that for the benefit of someone else, which is the beneficiaries. So they represent the beneficiaries, okay? So the trustee is what we call the fiduciary within this contract, okay? And then lastly, you have the beneficiaries. So those are the inheritors of the trust. Those are the individuals that are going to be receiving the assets that are inside of the trust that are owned by the trust once the trust is terminated or once the trust is expired, okay? So as long as the trust exists, those assets are going to remain inside of the trust and under the control of the trustee, okay? And those beneficiaries will be able to receive benefits from the trust, meaning that they can receive income and money from the trust, okay? So there are several different types of trust. There's hundreds of different types of trust, okay? I'm going to mention just a few of them so that you can begin to get familiar with the different types of trust, okay? Now, there's categories that I'm going to mention at this time, and every single trust falls within these categories. So the first category that I want to share with you guys is express versus implied, okay? So what do we mean by this? Well, an express trust is a written trust. So it is in that contract style that we have mentioned. So it's black and white. You print it out on paper, you sign it. So there's a physical component to this type of trust, okay? Versus an implied trust. So an implied trust is where you have that verbal agreement. And so it is pretty much oral, right? So that means that everything has not been written down, so it's not physically in writing, okay? So between those two categories, you definitely want one that is expressed, okay? The next category that I want to share with you guys is simple versus complex. So a simple trust is shorter in nature, has less provisions, and the trustee is required to distribute the money that's inside of the trust to the beneficiaries versus a complex trust. So a complex trust is longer in nature. So that means that there's more terms and conditions or what we call provisions inside of that trust. And because it's complex, that means that the trustee is not required to distribute the money that's inside of the trust, okay? Next, we have discretionary versus non-discretionary. So what we mean by this is that a discretionary trust is a trust in which the trustee has full discretion to be able to make decisions for the trust that are not inside of the actual trust contract. Versus non-discretionary means that the trustee is unable to make those decisions on behalf of the trust organization if those things that have been mentioned are not inside of the contract, okay? So the next category that I want to tell you guys about is statutory versus non-statutory. A statutory trust is a trust where there are state statutes embedded inside of the contract. So every single state has its own laws. Those laws are called statutes, okay? They're statutes and codes. And so with that type of trust, those statutes and codes are embedded inside of the contract, which means that that trust is limited. So one, that state regulates that trust becomes a part of the public records because it's automatically registered with the state, and you are limited to only being able to operate that trust in that state, okay? Versus a non-statutory trust. So a non-statutory trust is where there are no state statutes and codes embedded inside of the contract, which means that you're able to operate the trust in the entire nation and not just only in one state. And you do not have to register that type of trust, which means that that state is not going to have jurisdiction over the trust, and you get to maintain the privacy of that non-statutory trust, okay? And then the last category that I want to tell you guys about is revocable versus irrevocable. So when we are describing the revocability of the trust, we're only describing it from one standpoint, which is the standpoint of the grantor. So what we're saying is that the grantor either has revocability or irrevocability. So with a revocable trust, usually the grantor and the trustee are the same person. Typically, they are actually all three parties, meaning that the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary are all the same person, which means that that type of trust is seen as your alter ego. So it's still seen as you because you are all three parties, okay? Which means that if there's any creditors that want to come after you, they can come after a revocable trust because it's seen as an extension of you. It's not seen as a separate entity from you, okay? So unfortunately, with a revocable trust, your assets are not protected at all. So the only thing that a revocable trust will help you avoid is probate, okay? So if a revocable trust were to end up in court through some type of litigation, then the judge would pierce through a revocable trust, which means that now you have to produce the trust in court, and everyone is going to know what's inside of the trust, the net worth of the trust, the assets of the trust, who the beneficiaries are, things of that nature, okay? Versus an irrevocable trust. So with an irrevocable trust, the grantor and the trustee are not the same person, okay? And because there's that degree of separation, the creditors cannot come after an irrevocable trust, okay? So because they're not the same person, it's not seen as an alter ego. It's actually seen as a separate entity from you and also from the grantor, okay? So with that type of trust, if it were to end up in litigation, the judge will not pierce through an irrevocable trust, okay, due to contract law. So with that being said, that means that you now get to maintain the privacy of the trust. You are not going to be forced to produce the trust in court. So no one is going to know the assets that you have inside of that trust, who the beneficiaries are, what the net worth is. So you get to maintain that obscurity and privacy, which is ultimately what you want. So with that being said, what you need to do is you need to learn how to actually create the trust, right? And so the first thing that you need to determine is what type of trust you want to create. So I just gave you a list of different categories that every single trust falls under, okay? And so what you want is a bulletproof trust, a trust that's going to hold up in court, and a trust that is going to be impenetrable, okay? And so the bulletproof trust is a trust that falls under these 5 categories. So it is express in nature, it's complex, it is discretionary, it is non-statutory, and it is irrevocable. So if you fully want to protect your assets, if you fully want to leave a legacy that's actually going to reach the next generation, then just make sure that that type of trust falls under those 5 categories, okay? All right, so now that we have discussed the different types of trust, the next thing that you need to do is after you've determined the type of trust that you want to create, you need to determine what you're going to name the trust. So just like how you started a business and you named the business, it's the same thing, okay? So there's 2 things that I need you to know. The first thing is that when it comes to your trust, do not name the trust after yourself. So if your name is John Smith, do not name the trust the John Smith Trust, okay? Because that is a dead giveaway and people are going to know that you're associated with that trust estate, okay? The next thing is that you do not have to have the word trust in the actual name, okay? So you can use very distinct words that are, in combination. So for example, let's just say that your favorite flower is a rose, right? You can name your trust the Rose Estate. Okay, so it doesn't have to have the word trust and it doesn't have to have your actual name in it. Okay, so now that you've determined the name of your trust, you need to determine the parties involved in the actual contract. So you have the grantor, you have the trustees, beneficiaries, and successors. So if you want to maintain full control over the assets inside of the trust, if you want to operate the trust, then you're going to appoint yourself as the trustee. That is the position that I recommend that you hold within this trust organization, okay? The next thing is that you're going to have to appoint someone to be the grantor of the trust, okay? So the grantor and the trustee collectively are the individuals that create the trust. Then you're going to appoint the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries most likely are going to be your children or your next of kin. So either your spouse, your siblings, or whoever you want to inherit your assets, okay? And then lastly is the successor trustee. So the successor trustee is the individual who's going to take over after you in the event that something happens to you, okay? So meaning that if you resign, if you become incapacitated and can't operate the trust, or if you transition and don't wake up tomorrow, then someone needs to be able to pick up where you left off. And that is going to be the successor trustee. So all you have to do is just make sure that that person is at least 18 years or older when you appoint them, so that they're able to take over for you, okay? Now that you've determined the different parties involved in the contract, it's time to actually create the contract. So you're going to create that agreement and you're going to put all of the necessary provisions in that agreement that's going to protect your actual assets. One of the provisions that we put are spendthrift provisions. Those spendthrift provisions are going to put you in a position to where you're controlling the money from the grave, which means that you're going to put either an age restriction on when the beneficiaries will be able to receive their distributions. You can put a distribution restriction, which is you actually restricting what they can spend the money on and what they cannot spend the money on. You can put an education restriction if you want, to say, hey, they need a college degree, or no, they don't need a college degree, right? So there's so many different provisions that you can place inside of the trust to not only protect the wealth that you're actually creating, but also to protect the beneficiaries and the entire organization. Because I will tell you this, those beneficiaries, if you allow it to be a free-for-all, they will blow all the money that's inside of the trust, okay? So don't let them do that. Now that you've actually created the trust, you've put all of those spendthrift provisions inside of the trust. Now it's time to legalize the trust. So what you're going to do is you're going to get the trust notarized, okay? So it's going to be notarized by a notary public, and the signatures that are required is the grantor's signature as well as the trustee's signature. So there's only 2 signatures that are required. Those individuals are going to have to sign in front of the notary. The notary is going to witness their signatures and place their seal on the actual trust agreement. Once the trust agreement is notarized, it is legal and you are able to then start operating that trust. So the first thing that you want to do when you begin to operate your trust is you want to go ahead and secure those trust funds, which means that you want to go ahead and open up that trust bank account, okay? So what does that actually look like? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to provide two pieces of documentation. You're going to go ahead to, you're going to choose a bank that you want to establish a banking relationship with, okay? So this can be a bank, it could also be a credit union, or it could be a brokerage firm or any financial institution that offers trust accounts. Not every single bank offers trust accounts, okay? So you need to do your research. You need to do your due diligence on what bank you want to establish a banking relationship with, okay? So the type of accounts that you're going to open up are going to be a selection of either a checking account, a savings account, a cash management account, or a brokerage account or a money market account, okay? So those accounts are capable of holding trust funds, okay? So all the money that is going to be held in the name of the trust are labeled as trust funds, okay? So now when you go to the bank to open up these types of accounts, what you're going to provide them with are two pieces of documentation. The first is your certificate of trust. Your certificate of trust is proof of identity that the trust actually exists. You're not going to be walking around with 60 pages of trust documents. You're going to walk around with one page, which is a certificate of trust. So just like how you walk around with your driver's license, which is a quick snapshot of who you are, the certificate of trust is a quick snapshot of what the trust is, okay? The second piece of documentation that you're going to provide is the EIN number. So that is an employer identification number that is going to be issued by the IRS, and you're going to provide the confirmation letter that you receive from the IRS. It is very hard to get a bank account without an employer identification number, okay? So that's why you want to go ahead and get that 9-digit number from the IRS so that you're able to open up this bank account without any issues, okay? So now that you've opened up the bank account, you're going to have to fund it with whatever the minimum is. So some banks, their minimums are different. So some of them are $100, some of them are $500, some of them are $1,000. It just depends on the bank, okay? And you're going to go ahead and fund that trust fund account. And then after that, you are now able to transfer your assets. So when it comes to you transferring your assets, this is the most important step, you guys. And this is a step that I see that people miss, okay? They skip this step entirely. So you set up a trust, but you never legally transfer your assets. That's an issue because if you don't legally transfer your assets, that means that your assets are not protected, okay? So for example, you have a house, right? And so when you bought this house, you received a deed to that property. And so that deed is currently in your personal name, right? And so what you need to do is you need to redeed that property into the name of the trust. So what we do is first we list the property inside of the trust. So the trust has different schedules or sections where you're going to identify the trust property, okay? And so you're going to list it within the schedules. And then after that, you're going to create a new deed, and it's going to be in the name of the trust. And then that new deed that's in the name of the trust needs to be recorded with the county recorder's office, okay? So once they record it, now the county is going to reflect the public records to show that the trust is the new owner of that property, okay? So that is the step that you need to take in order to protect that house that you live in, okay? So now let's talk about what a trust can actually protect you from, right? A trust can actually protect you from a lot of things, but these are some of the things that I see that are the most common. So a trust can protect you from bankruptcy, from divorce, from foreclosures, from heavy taxation, from lawsuits, as well as probate, you guys. So I'm just going to name a few of them. So the first one that I want to talk to you guys briefly about is divorce, right? Because a divorce is a transfer of wealth, unfortunately. And a divorce is obviously a lawsuit between two spouses, right? You have to go to court. You have to either split everything down the middle. Sometimes one spouse will end up with everything and the other spouse will end up with nothing, or you know, split it 50-50, right? And so how can a trust can actually protect you from this situation is if you set up a trust and if you place assets into the trust, meaning let's just say that you put a house, a car, you know, and $100,000 into a trust, right? And then 5 years later, you get a divorce. Everything that's inside of that trust is protected. It cannot be pulled into the divorce. Why? Because the divorce is between you and that spouse, right? And so inside of the divorce, they're going to include everything that's in your personal name. The 401k, whatever property that you have, whatever cash that you have, whatever debt and liabilities that you have, right? And so you are not the trust and the trust is not you. So they cannot pull in that trust into the divorce, which means that that trust and everything that's inside of that trust, which is the house, the car, and the 100,000, are protected. Okay, so just think about that. Now, the next thing I want to tell you guys about is lawsuits, because a lot of us, you know, so unfortunately, we walk around thinking that we're not going to get sued. And so I'm going to tell you, do not wait until you're getting sued to protect yourself from a lawsuit, because we live in a very sue-friendly country, right? We live in the United States of America. And so everybody wants to sue you, right? Your neighbor wants to sue you, your best friend wants to sue you, your employer, your coworker, everybody, right? You just you don't even think about it, right? And so because of that nature, what you need to do is you need to protect yourself in the event of that, right? So let's say that you guys are business owners, right? And you guys are operating an LLC, right? What does LLC stand for? Let me know what you guys think LLC stands for.
Limited liability company.
Thank you so much. Exactly. So when you hear the word limited liability company, what do you think that that means, right? So if the company has limited liability, who do you think is also liable? Yep, exactly. Yep. So in the chat, they're saying the owner, right? They're saying the owner, me, right? So that's absolutely true. So you hear it in the word, because a lot of us, we think that our LLC is the end all be all. We think that we're fully protected. You're not fully protected. It lets you know in the actual name, right? It's limited. So you have limited protection. So in the event that somebody comes after your LLC and your LLC cannot cover that judgment, guess who they're coming after? They're coming after you, right? And so the LLC gives you a little bit of protection, right? So what's going to happen is if somebody decides to sue your LLC, let's just say for $500,000, and your business loses that judgment, the judge is going to go after the LLC for the $500,000. But if the LLC doesn't have the $500,000, then what's going to happen is that judge is going to pierce through that corporate veil. That corporate veil is a little bit of protection that you thought that you had with your LLC. If that judge pierces through the corporate veil, they're going to go after the owner, right? And so if you're the owner, that means they're going to go after you. So if they go after you, the owner, what do you think that they're capable of doing? Well, what they're going to do is they are able to seize all of your assets. They are able to garnish all of your income, all of your money, all of your bank accounts, your W-2 income, everything. So you are putting yourself at risk by you being the owner of your business. You are 100% liable, right? And so instead of you being liable for that company, what you need to do is you need to take the risk off of you. You need to set up a trust, and then that trust be the owner of that business. Because now the trust is going to take full liability, 100% liability for that business. So if anything happens, then they're going to go after the trust, right? And if they can't find the trust, then they're not able to go after it, right? So you want to be able to have several layers of protection. You need to have a layer of protection between you and the business, okay? Because right now, the way that you're operating, right, you are operating in a way that is detrimental to you. It's detrimental to your assets, your family, your entire organization, right? So you don't want that, okay? So if you're not structured that way, it's time to get restructured, okay? So with that being said, as I mentioned, do not wait until you're getting sued to protect yourself from a lawsuit, okay? So the next thing that I want to talk to you guys about is I have another question for you, right? So hold on one second. Let me go back here. Okay, so my next question for you is the house that you live in, right? This house is in your name. And if you didn't wake up tomorrow and this house is in your name, how do you expect this house to be transferred to your son or your daughter, your spouse, or whoever you want to receive this property? So you guys can come off mute. You can let me know what you think.
So basically, this is in Medulla Bay. So basically, without a trust or without a will or anything like that, then it won't be passed down. Probate to get a hold of it and probably be sold off, and your beneficiaries won't be beneficiaries.
Correct. So if it's in your personal name, then it's going to go straight to court. So it's going to end up in probate. And what's going to happen is it's going to ultimately be up to a judge, right? And that judge is going to
See,
decide, yep, whether your children receive the house or not. And you
see,
need to Yep, you need to understand that you're going to be doing your family a disservice if you allow that to happen. And a lot of us, we have bought into that lie that society, has told us, right? Which is that my son or my daughter automatically receives, my house, right? Which is not the case. And so let me quickly break down what the probate process looks like because a lot of us are unfamiliar. We've never even heard the word probate before, right? So when it comes to you, right? And let's just say that you have all these assets. You have a house, you have a car, you have cash money in the bank, right? 500,000 in the bank, right? And this bank account is in your personal name. And you don't wake up tomorrow. What's automatically going to happen is the state where you are a resident, that state is going to create an estate for you. So they're going to create the John Smith estate. They're going to transfer your house, your car, and the cash money that you had sitting in your checking account. They're going to transfer it right into the estate. So at the end of the day, you're going to have an estate anyways. You just have to decide if you're going to let the state of Texas do it or if you're going to set up your estate now while you're living so you can have full control over that estate. Okay. So now that you didn't have a trust, right, and you thought that a will was good enough, a lot of people think, oh, I have a will is good enough. A will is automatically ends up in probate, and a will, the thing about a will is that it's a set of instructions for probate, right? So it's pretty much a wish list where you're telling the probate judge, I wish my son will get my house. I wish my daughter will get the cash money that I have in my checking account. It is a wish list. A will cannot own anything. It can't own a house. It can't own a car. It's not an entity, okay? So when you set up your trust, a will becomes obsolete, okay? So a lot of people think, oh, I have a will, that's the end all be all, when it is not, okay? Now, let's go back, right? So you you thought that your will was good enough. You never set up an estate while you were living, so you let the state of California do it for you, right? And so now your state goes straight into probate court, right? And so what happens is your estate is going to be represented by a probate attorney in probate court. And the first thing that the court system does is they are going to pay off your liabilities, meaning all of the debt that you owed to all of the creditors and you know, any type of financial institution, companies, businesses, things of that nature, okay? So what does that look like? Well, if you had credit cards, if you had student loans, if you had a mortgage, if you had anything, car note, anything like that, right? And one thing that a lot of people don't think about is how much medical bills you rack up at the end of life, right? And we never think about that. You could be sitting in the ICU for 2 weeks and you done racked up $600,000 in medical bills, right? What do you think the hospital's gonna do? What do you think the ICU is gonna do? What do you think those physicians are going to do? They are going to go after your estate for that $600,000, right? And so that is what the judge does. They start liquidating your bank account and start paying off those liabilities, right? And so now you have Medicare and Medicaid and the ICU that are now coming after your estate in the probate court system, right? And so unfortunately, what I've seen is that a lot of these like medical bills and these agencies, right? What you had inside of your estate wasn't enough to cover it. And so now the judge is liquidating your assets, right? So now the judge decides to sell your house. And it's so unfortunate because your children now have to fight in court to keep your house. But it's not up to them because you owe $120,000 to Medicaid, right? So you do not want that to happen. You don't want your children to have to fight in court to keep mom's house, to keep dad's house, right? So the probate process is actually avoidable. And there's only one way to avoid it, which is by you setting up your own trust estate while you're living, you transferring all of your assets into the trust estate now while you're living, because the only way to avoid the probate process is by having a trust, okay? And so what that looks like is if you decided, yes, I'm gonna get my affairs in order, yes, I'm gonna go ahead and set up my trust. And so you set up the trust, you transferred your house into the trust, you transferred your car into the trust, you opened up a trust fund bank account, you transferred that $500,000 into the trust, and you didn't wake up tomorrow, then what happens is your successor trustee, they take over, right? In the event that you transition. So they take over and they pick up where you left off, right? And so now they're going to continue to operate the trust exactly where you left off. And now your children get to actually grieve in peace because your trust organization is going to avoid the entire probate process, okay? And so your children are going to continue, they're going to receive their full inheritance. Two, they're going to receive benefits from the trust organization, right? From your trust because they're beneficiaries, right? And that debt that you had at the end of life, meaning the credit cards, the student loans, and the medical bills, all of that debt dies with you. So those creditors cannot come after your trust estate. And those creditors are going to have to discharge that debt because they have nothing to come after because you have nothing in your personal name. So that is the process that you want you and your family to take if you're intentional about one, securing the generational wealth and making sure that the wealth actually reaches the next generation. Okay. So let's continue on. Now, this is the wealth building formula, you guys. So what I want you to do is see that I have three different pillars here. So I have structure, I have credit, and I have invest, okay? So let's talk about structure really quickly. So when it comes to structure, you definitely want to have a for-profit and a nonprofit within your structure, okay? If you do not, then you want to consider getting restructured, okay? Now, the first trust that I am going to talk to you guys about is the business trust, okay? So remember when I mentioned earlier, if you have an LLC, you want the LLC to be owned by a trust. So specifically, it is a business trust, okay? So this business trust, right, you can operate it in two ways. You can either operate it as a holding company, which means that it's non-operational. It doesn't have any products or services, right? And so what it does, it actually holds the actual business that has all the products and services, okay? Or you can set it up to where you're operating a business with the business trust, okay? So what you want to do is you want this business trust to own your LLCs. So when it owns your LLCs, you need to take your name off of the LLC. So you're going to do an amendment to the articles of organization. You're going to remove your name as that authorized member, and you're going to add the business trust as the new authorized member so that the business trust is now fully liable for that business, okay? So with that LLC, the beautiful thing about the LLC is that whatever the LLC generates, it can do a K-1 distribution and send all of that to the owner, right? And so if it does that, then all of those funds go straight to the business trust. Now, because you're the trustee of the business trust, you are able to not only operate the business trust, but operate the business as well. So you're going to be the one that's managing the LLC and have full control over the LLC, okay? So let's just say that your LLC is generating $100,000, right? That $100,000 then can be distributed to the business trust, okay? So now $100,000 has come into the business trust. And the beautiful thing that I love about trust entities is that you spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers, right? And that's extremely powerful, right? So if you're going to spend the money first and be taxed on the leftovers, what does it cost in order to operate a business trust, right? So you have what we call OPEX, operating expenses, right? And so let's just say that it costs roughly around $30,000 in order to operate this type of entity. So out of that 100,000, you automatically deduct 30,000, and so now you have 70,000 that's left. Now, a business trust is a for-profit entity, so it is taxed. It's taxed anywhere between, I would say, 10% upwards of like 37%, okay? So with that being said, you're going to pay taxes on the 70,000, or you can actually distribute that. And so that's the other beautiful thing about the trust, right? Is that the trust can distribute income to the beneficiaries, and the trust doesn't have to pay taxes on what's distributed, okay? So instead of you paying taxes on the $70,000, the business trust is going to distribute that $70,000 to the beneficiary. Now, what we do is we make the beneficiary of the business trust, the family trust, okay? So the business trust is for business purposes, meaning that it's going to own your businesses or it's going to hold investments, okay? The next trust that you have is your family trust. Your family trust is for all of your personal endeavors that doesn't have anything to do with business. So that means that that's where you're going to put your primary residence. That's where you're going to have any of your other personal stuff. So your life insurance policies, things like that. And that's where you're going to have your children be the beneficiaries, okay? So now, what we do is we make the beneficiary of the business trust the family trust so that the money from the business trust can flow into the family trust so that we can provide for our family, okay? Now, the way that that happens is that 70,000 is distributed to the family trust. And so now the business trust is done paying taxes. Why? Because 100,000 came in, 30 of it was deducted through operating expenses, and 70 of it was distributed to the beneficiary. So there is a 0% tax liability for the business trust. So now, once again, right, whatever is coming into the trust, you're going to spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers. So the family trust just received 70,000 from the business trust. So the family trust has to pay taxes on the 70,000. So we're going to spend the money first, okay? So what does it cost in order to run your family? So let's just say that you have, things like mortgage, utility bills, groceries, insurance premium payments, gas, whatever, private school tuition, whatever it is, right? So let's just say it costs 60,000. So out of the 70,000 that came in, you are going to deduct 60,000 in operating expenses, and now there's only going to be 10,000 that's left. So in the perfect world, you're going to pay, taxes on the 10,000, okay? Another thing that you can do is you can do a distribution, or the other option is a contribution, okay? So if you do a contribution, that is what we call a charitable contribution, where you're going to donate that 10,000 to a charity of your choice. Now, we actually create our own charity, okay? So it's a tax-exempt nonprofit trust, right, that is designated as what we call a 508c1a, okay? So with that trust, it can be labeled as a church, a faith-based organization, a ministry, a charity. And so it could be for either religious or education purposes, okay? Now, with this type of entity, it is automatically exempt from federal income taxes with the IRS, okay? So we're going to set up our nonprofit arm so that in the event that we want to do charitable contributions, we can do charitable contributions to our entity, okay? So that 10,000 that we have to pay taxes on for the family trust, we're going to contribute it. Okay, so we're going to donate it to the 508c1a. And then on the family trust level, what we did was we had we did a tax deduction on the operating expenses, and then we did the contribution for the 10,000. So we are all done with our with paying taxes for the family trust, and we have a 0% tax liability. So now we received 10,000 in donations for our tax exempt nonprofit trust, okay? So with this trust, it's automatically exempt from federal income taxes. You don't have to go down through the whole 501c3 process because of the separation between church and state, okay? You can also qualify to be exempt from state taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, or any other form of taxes, okay? So with that type of trust, one of the beautiful things that I love is the IRS will allow you to donate up to 60% of your annual gross income. So let's just say you're a W-2 employee, right? And you make 100,000 for the year. The IRS will allow you to donate 60,000 to the 508c1a, and then instead of you paying taxes on the 100,000, you'll only pay taxes on 40,000 because you donated 60 of it, okay? So this is a strategy that you can use in order to reduce your tax liability. Because if you're able to save on taxes, that means that that money that you're saving, you can allocate it somewhere else, right? That means that you can place it in other places in order for you to acquire more assets or to invest those funds, okay? So the second pillar is credit. And you can qualify for grants, and then you can also build business credit. So just like how a LLC or a corporation can build credit off of their EIN, the business trust can also build credit off of the EIN as well. So you want to put yourself in a position to where you're leveraging more than one credit profile, right? So a lot of us, we leverage our personal credit, which is good, but you want to also build business credit so that you can qualify for higher lines of credit, okay? So just keep that in mind, because that's going to allow you to put yourself in a position to where you are leveraging and using OPM. So OPM is other people's money, okay? Specifically the bank's money, because ultimately the bank is using your money. Every single time that you get paid, that money goes straight into the bank, right? And so what is the bank doing with it, right? The bank is lending it out. So a lot of us, we think that our money is just sitting in the bank, but it really isn't, okay? We live in a system that operates off of the fractional reserve. So that means that only a fraction of that money is actually sitting inside of the bank at any given time. So if they're lending it out for mortgages and credit cards and car loans and all this other stuff, what are they doing? They're gaining interest off of that money, right? And so they are getting rich off of you because they are using other people's money. Okay, they're using your paycheck, your money, right? And so you need to be able to do what the bank is doing. So if the bank is getting rich off of OPM, you also need to be getting rich off of OPM as well. So you need to leverage the bank's money in order to multiply it, okay? So let's talk about the last pillar, which is invest. So these are my favorite assets for the trust, okay? So the first one is the Index Universal Life Insurance Policy, and then the last one is real estate. So with the Index Universal Life Insurance Policy, right, a lot of people think that insurance is supposed to be used when you're dead. But in all actuality, life insurance is supposed to be used when you are living. That's why it's called life insurance and not death insurance, okay? So there are a lot of living benefits inside of a life insurance policy, okay? I have 5 life insurance policies, and they are IUL policies. Now, these policies are owned by the trust. The trust is the one that pays the premium of these policies, and the trust is listed as the beneficiary, okay? So now, what are the benefits of these life insurance policies, right? Well, with this specific policy, there's several different types of policies, okay? With this one that I'm mentioning now is one, your money is protected. So let's just say somebody tries to sue you tomorrow, they can't just dip into your life insurance policy, okay? So that's a beautiful thing. The next thing is that it's liquid, right? Another thing is that it has a death benefit attached to it. So that means that your life is insured. So if anything happens to you, meaning that you transition, there's a death benefit, and your beneficiaries are going to be paid that death benefit, okay? And the other thing that I absolutely love is that it builds cash value. So cash value is a separate account where when you pay your premiums, right, there's a certain percentage that goes to the carrier for the cost of insurance, right? And then the other percentage goes straight into your cash value, okay? So let's just say your premium's $100, right? 20 of it will go to the carrier for the cost of insurance, and then 80 of it will go to your cash value. And so now every single time that you're paying your premiums, you are building cash value. And the beautiful thing that I love about this particular policy is that with this policy, right, you see the word index. And so it's actually going to be earning compound interest through the stock market. Okay. So the compound interest is earned by the stock market, specifically, right? The S&P 500. And so it's going to be tracking indices. So the stock market has several indices. It has the Dow Jones, the Nasdaq, and the S&P 500. So what's happening is your the carrier is actually going to have your cash value mirror the stock market. And so your money is not invested inside of the stock market because that's too risky. So what's happening is you're mirroring the stock market. So if the stock market is doing 9%, then what the carrier is going to do is they are going to give you a 9% return on your cash value. Okay. So that is where you have the opportunity to place your money into a vehicle where your money is going to be growing and it's going to be compounding and it's going to be risk-free, because one, is not invested in the stock market. So if the stock market crashes, then the only thing that happens is you're not going to get a return, but you don't lose any money, which is exactly what you want. Okay. So this is what we call the sweet spot, right? And so that is what you want to be doing with your money, right? You want to be parking your money into income producing places, okay? Where your money is going out and is working for you. So every single dollar needs to go out and bring back friends, right? It needs to go out. It needs to get pregnant. It needs to bring back babies. It needs to bring back 10 cents, 15 cents, 25 cents, right? So you need to be putting your money to work versus you going to work. So a lot of us, we are so used to, what society has programmed us to thinking, right? They've put us in this position where they've brainwashed us into this whole system of working 40 hours for 40 years and retiring when we're 65. Okay? That is what everyone does in society. Why? Because we have been programmed since kindergarten, all right, to be institutionalized, to sit in a place for 8 hours a day and to exchange our time for money, right? And so we need to break out of those cycles. Those are vicious cycles that we unfortunately have been born into. And so we need to break those cycles. We need to get out of that rat race. And so it's going to take a mindset shift. It's going to take you doing things differently. It's going to take you taking that leap of faith, right? Into knowing that there's something different, right? Because what society wants is for you to have financial freedom or location freedom or all these types of freedoms when you're 65. When you're 65 is when you can travel. When you're 65 is when you can retire. When you're 65 is when you're going to collect Social Security, right? No, that is not the way, right? So I'm here to tell you that there's different ways for you to be able to retire yourself at a young age. You don't have to wait until you're 65. I retired at 31 years old, and the reason why I did that was because I was extremely intentional. I did not want to wait until I was 65. And it was I experienced something at work. So I used to be a registered nurse. Um, and when I was a registered nurse, it was hard. It was hard. It was hard working 12 hours. It was hard spending so much time away from my family. I was extremely frustrated because I quickly discovered that I was spending more time in the hospital than I was with my family. And that's what led me into looking for a second stream of income. That's what led me into investing in real estate. That's what led me into being able to retire myself. And when I was working, I was frustrated because I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was making $21 an hour. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to give myself 10 years. And I end up doing it in 8 years versus 10 years. But in the midst of me being a nurse, I had a coworker, and she was a beautiful lady. One day she was super tired at work, and she had already been working for 40 years. And I'm like, you are 66. Like, when are you going to retire? And she said, I'm going to give myself another year and a half. I'm going to wait until I'm 67 and a half because Social Security is going to give me an extra couple of dollars. And I was like, wow. But I could tell that she was tired. So one day after work, she got into her car and she hit the tree right in front of the hospital. And she had died on impact. She didn't make it to 67 and a half to collect her Social Security because she bought into it. She bought into the lie. So you have to make this decision for you and your family, what you want to do. But the goal is freedom. So I'm just telling you that it takes a mindset shift. And so we got to think differently in order to have a different outcome. And so it takes things like this in order for you to see that you have to get structured the right way. You got to park your money in the right places in order to be protected, because tomorrow is not promised, unfortunately. So, um, so anyways, back to life insurance. So, the beautiful thing about the life insurance, as I mentioned, is that it's a perfect marriage between the trust and between those life insurance policies. And as I mentioned, right, if anything happens to you, right, there's a death benefit and your family is going to get paid out, right? So that death benefit, let's just say it's $1 million. That $1 million is going to go straight to the trust, and your children are the beneficiaries of the trust, right? So just think about that. The next thing I want to tell you guys about is real estate. I absolutely love real estate, and real estate was my way out of the hospital. And I want to tell you that I'm so passionate about real estate because, like, growing up, we lived in abandoned buildings and were homeless until my mom decided to get on Section 8. And I actually like fell in love with real estate at a young age. And so once I started working as a nurse, that was the first thing that I decided to do, was to buy a house and to fix it up. So it's just so near and dear to my heart because I see that a lot of people can actually become financially free off of it. Why? Because it gives you passive income. So every single house that I've ever bought in the last 10 years, I did not use any of my own money. So you can actually buy real estate zero down. And the way that you can do that is obviously by leveraging OPM, leveraging other people's money. Okay. So That's what I did. And so let me quickly break it down to you. So a trust can buy real estate, okay? A trust can own a property. A trust can take out a mortgage, okay? A trust can get a home equity line of credit. A trust can get loans, okay? So if you know and understand this, then what you need to know is that one, you definitely want to buy real estate that has multiple doors. Okay, so let's just say that you buy a duplex, right? So with this duplex, you have 2 units under one roof, right? So the way that you can buy this property is you can use a debt service coverage ratio loan, which is a DSCR. So with this type of mortgage, it is for properties that are not owner occupied. So they're for investment properties, okay? And these types of entities, like a trust, can take out a DSCR. So they will cover up to 80% of the purchase price. So if you're getting a DSCR and you have 80% of the purchase price already covered, then all you have to do is you got to look for the 20%. So that's what's going to be your down payment. So remember, previously we had discussed OPM using the bank's money and building credit, right? And so let's just say that you get a credit card, right? And this credit card has 50,000. What you're going to do is you're going to strip that credit card. You're going to take out that $50,000, right? And you're going to park it in a place where it's producing income, right? You're not going to go blow it. So the first place, so let's just say that we got a credit card. We got 50,000 on the credit card. We're going to take that 50,000 out. So the first place that we're going to put that 50,000 is into our index universal life insurance policy, right? And so that 50,000 is going to go straight into our cash value. And our cash value, then that 50,000 is going to earn compound interest, right? Why? Because it is mirroring the market. It's mirroring the S&P 500. And let's just say the S&P 500 did 10%. We're earning 10% off of that 50,000, okay? But you need that 50,000 for the down payment on the real estate. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a loan from the life insurance carrier. So you're going to contact them and say, "Hey, I have 50,000 in my cash value. I need to borrow 49,000." They're going to look inside your cash value. They're going to say, "Yeah, okay, no problem. We're going to lend you 49,000 from our reserves, from our bank account, from our money." So your 50,000 is still sitting inside of your IUL, collecting compound interest, earning that 10%. And the insurance company just direct deposited 49,000 into your bank account. So now you go to the closing table and you close and you use that 49,000 as the other 20% that you needed for that property. So now you just bought this property, right, with zero down. You didn't use any of your own money. You used the DSCR plus the money that came from the credit card, okay? So now you have this income producing property that is now you're collecting rent on the first of every single month, and it is generating income, right? And so that income is going to go to the trust, right? But whenever, let's just say that, you know, that it's producing $4,000 a month, right? So this $4,000 that you're getting on the first of every single month, the first thing that's going to happen is that $4,000 is going to go straight into your index universal life insurance policy. Okay, so your policy is going to go up, your cash value is going to go up by 4,000, right? You're going to borrow 3,900. Then you're going to be able to pay the mortgage as well as the credit card, and then whatever's left over is going to sit inside of that trust fund, and it's going to accumulate, and then you are going to rinse and repeat, and you're going to do this strategy all over again. Okay, so let's continue on. So the next thing that I want to tell you guys about is put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. And I'm going to say it again because it's so important. Put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything, okay? So that is what stewardship is. And that is what you guys need to be doing. You need to be operating in stewardship where you are guiding the wealth, where you are being a good steward of the wealth, where you are already ensuring how the wealth is going to be transferred to the next generation versus how you're operating now. So how you're operating now is you're operating in ownership, which means that you've bought into societies, you know, what they're telling you, which is that you want to be this proud owner, right? I'm the proud owner of my house. I'm the proud owner of my business. I'm the proud owner of my car, right? And so you have to understand, right, that if you don't wake up tomorrow, that house is still going to be there, right? That land is indestructible. That land is going to be there forever, okay? So what you truly want is control over that property, right? It's not ownership that you want. Is, hey, I want to be able to control this property now while I'm living. Okay. And so that's what you're going to get by setting up a trust and by being the trustee of the trust, right? Because the trust owns the property and you control the property because you control the trust. Okay. So that is what you need to do. And as I mentioned, it takes a mindset shift, right? We need to get off of the hamster wheel and off of, the lies that we have bought into, okay? And just do things differently. That's what it takes. So now, how do you actually transfer your wealth, right? Well, the way that you're going to transfer your wealth is by way of TCUs. So TCU stands for Trust Certificate Unit, right? Trust certificate units are just like stock certificates. So you know how stock certificates represent ownership in a corporation? Well, TCUs represent beneficial interest in a trust. Okay, so with the trust, we don't say that anybody owns it. Okay, that's not what we say because the trust is a living entity just like you. And so if nobody owns you, nobody owns a trust. Okay, so people have what we call beneficial interest. Okay, so with your trust, right? When you set up this trust, it's going to have 100 trust certificate units. That's going to represent 100% of beneficial interest. So now you have to give off these units to your kids. So let's just say that you have 4 kids. You're going to give each of them 25 units. So now they have 25% beneficial interest. Let's just say that your trust has $1 million, right? So if one of your children has 25 units, that means that they have 25%. 25% of the $1 million of the total net worth means that their beneficial interest is equivalent to $250,000, okay? So that's what it looks like when you actually transfer your wealth. Now, as long as the trust is intact, everything belongs to the trust, and those beneficiaries are only going to receive beneficial interest. So they're only going to receive distributions. So that means that they'll receive like a little percentage, right? So let's just say that, this month we are distributing, 40,000. So if I'm one of your beneficiaries, that means I'm going to get 10,000, for this month, right? So that's just an example. Okay. So now let's talk about preservation of wealth, because a lot of people, they never, ever, ever even think or to ask themselves, how am I going to preserve this money, right? A lot of us, we know how to make the money, right? Or we're so focused on making the money, right, that we never even think, how am I going to preserve this money? How am I going to grow this money? How am I going to protect this money? How am I going to transfer this money, right? And so how many times do we see it where athletes, actresses, actors, famous families, that they end up losing their wealth, right? Or by the second and third generation, that whole family is broke. We see it all the time. Why is that? Because they don't have the tools for preservation, right? And so what are the tools? There's 2 tools. One is a trust. The second one is the life insurance policies. So you have to understand that the trust is very, 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 very serious about its assets. So the trust is going to insure all of its assets. So the trust has a house, it has homeowners insurance. The trust has a car, it has car insurance. The trust has cash, it has FDIC insurance, right? So the trust also has human assets, which are you. You and your children are human assets inside of the trust organization. So that means that the trust needs to protect those human assets, which means that the trust needs to insure you. Okay, so the trust is going to take out a life insurance policy on all the humans associated with the trust. All right, so that's the trustees, as well as the beneficiaries, as well as all of the future beneficiaries, okay? Because in the event that something happens to you, the trust is going to be devastated. I will tell you that, okay? And if the trust is devastated, the trust needs to be compensated for that loss, because the trust just lost the most important person. You are the trustee, right? And so the trust needs to be compensated for that loss. And so that death benefit, right? Let's just say you have a death benefit of $2 million. That death benefit goes straight to the trust, and now the trust is replenished with $2 million inside of that trust fund, right? So you have to be able to implement tactics like that in order to preserve the wealth that you are working so hard for. Okay, so now, as we mentioned, right, the trust is going to is going to take out a policy on you. You are going to be the insured. The trust is going to own that life insurance policy. The trust is going to pay those life insurance premiums, and the trust is going to be the beneficiary of that life insurance policy, right? Because they're going to receive the death benefit, right? And so that's going to be for you, for the beneficiaries, and for those future beneficiaries. Those future beneficiaries, those are called trust fund babies. So when you hear that term trust fund baby, you know what it means. That is a baby that is born into a trust, okay? And so what happens is immediately when that baby is born into the trust, right? As soon as that baby is 30 days old, the trustee takes out a life insurance policy on that baby. Okay, so that baby is now insured. The trust is now paying those premiums every single month for that trust fund baby. Okay, now that trust fund baby that is a beneficiary of the trust is going to grow up. That baby is going to be 18 years old. Once that baby's 18 years old, there's some things that they need, right? Let's just say that they're going off to college. Let's just say that they need an apartment. Let's just say that they need a car, right? And so if that trust fund baby needs a car, they can normally go down to the dealership, pull their credit, get into an expensive car note, paying $1,000 a month for a $30,000 car. They can do that, right? Or what can happen is, because they are a trust fund baby and a beneficiary in a trust, they can go to the trust. And if they go to the trust, then what they can do is they can request a loan. So who can take loans out? Trustees and beneficiaries can take loans from the trust and can give loans to the trust. Okay? And so they can request a loan for $30,000 so that they can go buy their first car. So now the trustee is going to go ahead and issue that check and hand it to them. They go and buy their car cash. And now instead of them paying $1,000 to the dealership, they're going to pay $300 to the trust. So now the trust is collecting $300 a month from the trust fund baby, earning a little bit of interest. So let's just say a year into the future, that trust fund baby is like, no, I don't want to pay this $300 anymore. Well, that's completely fine. So that trust fund baby just defaulted. So that means that they can't get no money from the trust anymore. But they do not have to pay that money back because the money did not originate from the trust. That money actually originated from the trust fund baby's life insurance policy. Because the minute that that trust fund baby came into the trustee to request a loan, that trustee went to their life insurance policy, contacted the carrier, and said, hey, I need a loan for $30,000. That life insurance carrier saw that they had the money inside of the cash value, right? Because they look at it because it's a liquid asset, right? So they look at it as collateral. So they went ahead and did a direct deposit for $30,000 straight into the trust fund. And then that check was issued to the trust fund baby. So because the loan originated from the life insurance policy, it doesn't have to be paid back because it's automatically going to be deducted from the death benefit. Okay. So that death benefit of $3 million, they're going to deduct that 30,000 from that 3 million. And then once that trust fund baby transitions, that 3 million minus the 30,000 goes straight into the trust. Okay. So that is what preservation of wealth looks like, and that is what everyone should be implementing within their family, okay? So these are the books that I recommend. I recommend What Would the Rockefellers Do? That's a really good book on trusteeship. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2. Family Wealth is a really good book about running your family like a business. And the Complete Book of Trust just teaches you about the different types of trust, okay? So what I want to do is I want to tell you to take action on the information, okay? So let me show you a quick video of a trustee that took action on the information that I provided tonight.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while. And, there are a number of people offering trust these days. And, I guess that's the big thing, don't own anything, control everything. That kind of, I didn't say it correctly, but that is the sentiment. And so it seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions, things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. And thank you, Mondo. That was a great explanation of infinite banking. I know a number of people are talking about that, but they make it so complex. And his presentation was nice and succinct and very informative. So this has been an overall great experience. Definitely will recommend you to others.
So take action on the information that I shared with you guys tonight, because it could be your new way of doing business. It could be your new way of making a profit. It could be a new way of protecting the wealth. It could solve a lot of your problems dealing with asset protection, with saving on taxes, or with just how you guys are operating and how y'all structured, right? And so you want to treat this like a big business. You don't want to treat this like a small mom and pop shop, right? You want to treat this like as if you're running Google and Facebook and Amazon, right? So as I mentioned, if you are not structured like this, to where you have a for-profit and a nonprofit within your structure, then you definitely need to get restructured, okay? So let's work together. I do have a program that teaches you step by step how to set up these trusts, okay? So the trust that I mentioned, the business trust, the family trust, and the nonprofit tax exempt trust, okay? So I have three options here. So the first one is where you can do it yourself. So in the do it yourself, what happens is we have an online course. It comes with 43 video modules. It comes with all of the trust templates that you need. You do get lifetime access to the course, and you get the resources and ebooks, okay? So the books that I just mentioned, we include them in the program electronically, and then you get a bunch of resources teaching you how to actually operate this trust, right? So the way that it works is you're going to get the training modules, and I break down every single paragraph of those trusts. You download the trust, and then you're able to set up those trusts on your own, okay? So the resources that are included are things like, if you need to have a board meeting for your trust, right? Or if you need to file taxes for your trust, we have the resources, right? If you need to transfer your property into the trust, we have the quitclaim deeds. If you need to be able to transfer your cars, we have the bill of sales for you to submit to the DMV. Okay. So the next thing is that we actually have a private Facebook community, and we also have a Telegram chat so that you are able to communicate with the other people in the community, which are like-minded individuals. Okay. So As of right now, we have over 1,300 trustees in our community. That these individuals are people who have already, have already set up their trusts. Their houses are in trust, their businesses are in trust. They have, crypto, they have all kind of stuff, right? And so you get access to those individuals that are in your city, they're in your state, okay? So the do it yourself is only $997. The second option is done with you. So with the done with you, it is where we're going to meet on Zoom together in a group, just like how we're doing right now. Okay. So it is Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it is in a workshop style setting. So we're going to meet 5 days straight, Monday through Friday. Okay. And on Monday, what happens is I break down the business trust. So we're going to set up the business trust together. I go ahead and break down every single paragraph of the trust so that you can understand the contents of the trust, okay? You are not going to be able to operate a trust efficiently and effectively if you don't know what's inside of the trust, okay? So I'm going to break it down and teach you every single thing that's inside of the trust so that you can understand the provisions, the terms, the conditions, the bylaws, okay? That's very important. So after we do that and I show you how to set up the business trust, then we dive right into Q&A so that I can answer any and all questions that you guys might have, okay? And then on Tuesday, we do the same thing. So on Tuesday, we break down the family trust and then we dive into Q&A. Wednesday, we go through the tax exempt nonprofit trust. We dive into Q&A. I also show you guys how to get ordained as well. So that environment, being on Zoom with other people, it actually, you actually end up learning more because those people are asking really good questions that you did not know that you wanted to know. So it's very impactful to be in that workshop with like-minded individuals. So once again, you do get lifetime access to the workshop. You still get access to the course, to the Facebook community and the Telegram chat, but you get accountability, right? You also get that sense of knowing and understanding that that your questions are answered, right there on the spot, and that we're going to hold you accountable. So the last 2 days of the workshop are Thursday and Friday. So on Thursday, what we do is we focus on applying for your EINs with the IRS. Then I give you a list of banks so that you can understand how to open up those bank accounts. So we go through banking procedures, we go through banking operations. I show you how to have a board meeting for your trust. And then our educator comes in and teaches about the business credit and the funding so that you can get the money that you need in order to acquire the assets for the trust, because you want the trust to be able to sustain itself, okay? So the last day is Friday, and Friday is about transferring your assets. So I will show you step by step how to transfer your house into the trust and how to fill out the quitclaim deeds and where to record it with the county recorder's office. And then we do the same thing for the vehicles where we fill out the bill of sales and we submit it through the DMV. And then we fill out the business purchase agreement so that you guys can put your LLCs and your corporations into the trust. So, and then how to do the amendments with the Secretary of State, okay? And then lastly, our CPA comes in and teaches you guys about the tax forms for the trust and answers all of your tax questions. So the workshop is only $2,500 and it is very powerful. The last option is done for you. So with the done for you option, that is where my team will be able to set up everything for you. Okay, so that means that we set up all of your trusts, we apply for all of your EINs, and we transfer all of your assets. So it's very customized. We go through structure and we assist you with every single thing that you need from start to finish, A to Z. So with that, you do get private sessions with me in order for us to go through your structure and to assist you, on an individual basis. So the done for you option is only $7,500. So what you have to do is, if you guys are interested, you will go to the website. So the website is wealthytrustee.com. You guys can also send us a text, and then you can also email us. So for those of you guys that are on the call, you guys can enjoy a 20% off using the discount code TRUST20. So you can enjoy that for the next 24 hours. So now what I want to do is I want to show you guys what an actual trust looks like and what the actual course looks like. So this is the actual course. So when you guys sign up, you receive access to the course. You do get lifetime access, which is great, right? And so the first thing that you want to do is you'll dive right into trust entity, where you're going to learn what a trust is, who the different parties involved, like the grantors, trustees, beneficiaries, successors, protectors, the different types of trust. You learn how to set up the ministry trust. We go through all of that. You learn how to set up the family trust. You learn how to set up the business trust. We go through tax strategies so that you can learn how to operate tax exempt. So you can learn the different tax structures for all three trusts. So you can learn what distributable net income is and how to avoid tax evasion. So we go through asset protection. So you're going to take an inventory of your asset first. Then you'll learn how to open up a bank account, a brokerage account, how to transfer your house, your cars, your life insurance policies, as well as your businesses, and how to have board meetings. And then next we go into wealth creation, where you learn how to build that business credit. You learn how to invest in the stock market, and you learn how to do the private money banking with the life insurance policies. And then you'll learn how the importance of a legacy crest. And then you have all of your resources and your ebooks. So this is what an example of our trust document looks like. So everything that you see in red is what you're going to be filling out and customizing for your trust organization. So as I mentioned, I break down every single paragraph so that you guys can understand the contents of the trust. You are not going to be able to run an organization efficiently and effectively without being able to know what's inside of it, okay? So with that, without further ado, I want to go ahead and open up the floor for Q&A. Do I have any questions? Anybody have any questions based off of anything that I mentioned tonight? And the links are in the chat, you guys. So the links to the website is in the chat. And then
Yes, I have a question.
yeah,
I'm
go for
sorry.
it. Go for it.
I have two questions. Would this webinar that we participated in tonight would be available for recording?
Yes, we're gonna go ahead and put the replay link inside of the chat.
Okay. I love the way that you explain everything. I mean, it just flows and you just can get everything. It's almost like I don't have a question to ask because you just explain everything so well. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you for that. And I wanted to ask about the 508. I noticed that you mentioned that I kind of had like a time conflict and also people calling me. So I was missing little bits and pieces. That's why I'm requesting a recording. But the thing about the 508 that I've always been hearing and hearing and hearing from a particular source is that you can get 10 times back what is deposited in this account. Is it complicated to do that? Or is it really fairly easy? I mean, how does it work or does it not work?
I haven't heard of that strategy working. I know of a lot of people that joined another organization and they tried and they waited years and they never received 10 times their deposits.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am.
And yet this person, I know exactly who you're talking about, shows everybody a check that was gotten by somebody that they worked with. See the check? See the check? So I don't know. It's like, is that true? Or is that a scam? Like, I don't even know. So, but moving right along, thank you. A lot of other people that I asked also, they've never heard of such a thing. And I was thinking that, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't go with you, or maybe I should go with that person that can get 10, and they can't even get the 10 times back for anybody, except for one
Yeah.
person.
So I'm glad that you asked that question. Um, and as I mentioned, I know people in my program that personally went through all the steps and they were unsuccessful, multiple people. So, all
That's
right.
not good. That's a big red flag, because that means that people are being misled and misguided, and that's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, so that's why I tell people do your research and your due diligence, to make sure that everything that you hear on the internet is factual. So I always tell people, but thank you for those kind words, Miss Melissa.
You're welcome.
All right.
Yes,
Uh,
my name is Deanne Gordon, and I want to ask you a question about
yes,
something.
ma'am. Yeah, go for it.
I lost my father back in 2022. Now, I was on his bank account, and they have something what they call paid payable on death. Are you familiar with that? That I didn't have to take his probate, um, his bank accounts or savings account to probate. Have you
Yeah,
ever heard of it?
yeah, so with the bank, as long as you actually fill it out. So you have to, and obviously every single bank is different, but the banks do have paperwork to where you can list the beneficiary, and if anything happens to you, it'll go to that beneficiary.
Okay, and that's what payable on death is, right? That it
Yes.
don't go through probate, correct?
Yes. So
Okay,
I'm not gonna say that it completely avoids probate, because there have been some instances where the court gets involved before the bank is even able to issue the beneficiary the money that's inside of the accounts.
okay. Well, ours have been already done and everything, the probate and everything, but they didn't go into the bank account at all.
Okay.
And then that was in South Carolina. So it may be different there.
All right.
Okay.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
Hi. My name is Lisa, and I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Um, if my father is the grantor, and well, if my father's the trustee, would I be able to be the grantor if I have power of attorney for him at this time period? And then when he passes, then I could be the trustee?
So, if the trust is irrevocable, then the grantor can never be the trustee. So, you would have to put someone else as the grantor, and you can place yourself as the successor so that when he passes, you become the trustee.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you pick someone like that? I'm just like if you don't have trust, like I hate to say, I get this person who's the grantor. That they have to be someone you trust, or can they just be someone you name who's willing to sign, or does that person have to be deeply embedded in the situation, or be in a position to actually grant anything?
So someone that you assign, so they don't have to, they don't have to be in, they're not going to be involved.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thank you very
welcome.
much.
You're welcome. All right, next we have Tosh.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic.
I have my grandmother just recently passed, and I am she made me the beneficiary in her trust. It was an irrevocable trust. And my mom is half owner of the house, but the other part that was my grandmother's was left to me. I have an appointment with our lawyer to speak about it, but I'm not sure like what happens next after um after all of this, like after the she's passed on.
Okay. So I need some clarity. So she's still living or she transitioned already?
She transitioned in August. Her trust was made in 2022 and it was an irrevocable trust, but the trust is in her name. Um, I also was doing some other stuff and I created another trust for her as well with the EIN, but I don't I think I might need some other kind of help.
Okay, so
Because the lawyer's supposed to go over the deed and everything with me. He asked me to get like 5 death certificates, but the funeral home is not allowing that. Like I have to go through my mom to get other death certificates.
okay, so let me ask you a question. Whose name is on the deed?
My grandmother and my mom.
Okay, so that's an issue because the name that should be on the deed is the actual trust that your grandmother created.
Mm,
So
okay.
that means that your grandmother never transferred the property into the trust if the deed doesn't have the name of the trust on it. So this is what I was explaining earlier, which is the biggest mistake that I see everyone make when they set up a trust and never legally transfer the assets into the trust. And then they transition and their family still has to go to probate.
So the lawyer, he is the one who did everything. So the deed is in the paperwork, but I don't know if we were supposed to personally transfer the deed into her name because it's in the actual trust.
Yeah, so the deed was supposed to be recorded through the county.
He he did. He did. It's like notarized and everything, so I guess it is. Because it's the trust is her name.
Just because it's notarized doesn't mean it's recorded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you just got to go based off of what's on the deed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions,
Yes, it's Melissa again.
Melissa?
All right. The other trust that was put in the package, besides the 508 with the falsified information that we are clear now, getting 10 times back, there was one that was presented that was nicknamed the Bulletproof Trust, where it's non-interest bearing. Not taking interest from the bank puts you in a position when you have a trust checking account to receive every deposit that comes through that um, through through that account. Is that true, or is that a scam?
So what you're talking about, so can you get that type of account? Yes. You can get that.
Okay.
You can get a non-interest bearing account for a trust. Now, are you going to receive back 10 times how much you deposit
No,
into
no,
that?
no, not 10. Just your deposits. Just your deposits. Just what's deposited in it, not 10 times. That was the 508. Then this one is coupled with it, which is the bulletproof, where you're supposed to get back what you deposit in that account for the year. You get back all your deposits.
Yeah,
So I
so
haven't heard anybody else. Yeah, I haven't heard anybody else getting any these things, but this is presented to get people to take this course.
yeah, so as I mentioned, there are several people in my community that have attempted and failed. So,
At that trust as well. Okay.
right.
Okay. All right, that's sad. But
Mhm.
it's good that they're with you because they're going to be on the right track now. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Christine, I have a question.
Okay. Um, who is that speaking? I see
Uh,
Debbie
it's,
and
Ta-
who else?
it's Takashimaya.
Okay, go for
It's
it.
Takash. Yeah.
Takashima, how are
The
you?
question. I'm pretty good. Yourself?
Fantastic.
Great. I want to kind of piggyback off of something that Melissa just asked, but it's not exactly what she was saying. Let's say you have a trust set up, and I'm the trustee, and let's say I assign someone to be the grantor, and let's say somewhere along the line this person passes away. How does that affect my trust? Do I have
That's
to
a
assign a
really
new
good
grantor?
That's a really good question. So, um, remember when it comes to you actually operating a trust, right? It's going to take a mindset shift, okay? So the trust is designed to outlive the grantor, and the trust is designed to outlive you.
Okay.
So because it's irrevocable, it's absolutely okay that the grantor transitions. It's designed for that. So in the future, if let's just say you need to do a transaction, all you have to do is let them know that the grantor transitioned. Some financial institutions will ask you for a death certificate. That's completely fine. So it should already be a part of your trust records. Now, if anything happens to you, you have a successor trustee that's going to take over for you. So obviously, if anything happens to you, you are no longer the trustee. That position is vacant, and whoever you appointed and nominated to take over, that person then becomes the trustee.
Okay. Another question, pretty much along the lines of what you just were saying. Um, okay, so you basically saying the trust is able to survive, was supposed to survive and outlive me, and it goes on to the successor trustee. Damn, I just forgot my question that fast. Jesus Christ, thinking so many things. I'm gonna have to get back to you because it just put my mind that fast. But I know it was along those lines. Oh God, I can't think of it. Oh, this is what it was. Um, in a situation where you assign a person to be your grantor, how do you go about like choosing a grantor? Like, because that is really unclear to me.
Okay, so a grantor has to be at least 18 years or older. A grantor could be um pretty much anyone. So they could be a best friend, they could be a coworker, they could be a sibling or a parent. So anyone who actually wants to set up the trust with you. So it's these two parties, you and the grantor, that are setting the trust up together.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate your help. That answers that question. Okay. Cool.
Absolutely, you're welcome. Next we have Debbie. Debbie, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Um, Let me just get a hold of it. Hold on. Okay. Is there a way to protect seniors' homes and assets through a trust from the Medicaid payback process? Especially for for example, seniors who are trying to obtain Medicaid for additional medical assistance, or for seniors who have qualified for Medicare for years and now through the Medicaid waiver program, these seniors qualify for Medicare and Medicaid. Can these seniors protect their homes to build wealth or convey their homes to future generations through the way of a trust and avoid the Medicaid payback procedure?
So I mean, you protecting your asset is not exempt, like seniors are not exempt. So they can very well protect their assets by transferring it into the trust. I will tell you that there is a look back period. So Medicaid and Medicare, they do look back to see, if they had property and when the property was transferred. And as I mentioned, the look back period usually is like 2 to 5 years. So the best thing for them to do is to gift that property. So some of them, what they'll do is they will gift it to a family member, and then that family member will place it into a trust. Or they will place it directly into a trust. It just depends on, if they're eligible now or in the near future, if they're going to fall within that look back period.
So you say they have a look back period. If they were to gift that property, would that affect them in any way as far as having to pay Medicare back for any of their services if it was in a certain time frame? Within
So yeah,
year?
so the look back period is the time frame.
So whether that person would put it in the trust or not, it means that they could still come after that asset, even though it was in the trust.
So it is a possibility. It depends. So everything is on a case by case basis. So it depends on if they go to the extent to activate the look back period to see if that person had a property within the last 5 years. Did that answer your question?
Sort of, kind of, thinking, yeah, it did. But then I'm now trying to think of, basically, how to, if it's anything that can be done to, keep that property, for future generations without, having those liens against the property. The best way to avoid that.
Yeah, so even though there is a look back period, it doesn't mean that they're gonna go to that extent to do it. So I always recommend moving forward and protecting the property, especially from probate.
Oh yeah, and that's what got me. I heard you say that earlier. So once it's in a trust, it is protected from probate, so you have a better chance that way. Probably.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next we have Bridget. Bridget,
Good,
do you have a
good.
question?
Yep. Sorry about that. Couldn't find my chat. Anyway, or my mic. Anyway, so my question is, sorry about that. With your trust having an EIN number, does that make it a corporation?
No, it doesn't.
Okay,
No.
so
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 any entity that is not a corporation can be issued an EIN number.
okay. So the trust is not a corporation, the same as a corporation then.
Correct. No. Yeah,
Okay.
a corporation is separate from a trust. They're both entities though. They're both entities. Yeah.
Okay.
But a trust is a trust and a corporation is a corporation. And then you have
Okay.
different types of corporations as well. You have a C type, you have an S type. So
Sole
yeah,
proprietor. Okay.
so they're not the same.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful
And
day. Appreciate you.
you too. Thank you. And let's see. Angelica has a question.
Hi. So my question is, I'm construction. I own a construction business, and I was advised that a business trust wouldn't be the right route to go since I have to enroll my business through the state of Nebraska to register as a construction contractor. Um, and I was advised to go a beneficial trust instead of a business trust. Is that something you would also advise somebody in the
So
construction business?
No. So what I would say is, even though you need that statutory entity, so some businesses do need statutory entities, right, for licensing purposes, okay? So because you need that statutory entity, that's completely fine. You'll keep that entity intact, which most people do. And you can still have the business trust be the owner of that entity. So
Right.
I personally, now one of the strategies that you can use is that you can be the trustee and the beneficiary of the business trust. So it's pretty much still the same thing. So they just want you to be able to still have control and benefit from it.
And no, I'm glad you said that because I was very confused why I wouldn't want to put my business entity in a business trust to get all the perks that come along with it.
Mhm.
So I was very confused when I would ask the question, why, if they talked about how great a business trust is, but then again, they were wanting to put me in a beneficial trust. I just that was a main question. I just was really confused about that.
Yeah. So
Um,
I'm not sure, I'm not sure like what you were previously told, but they were probably assuming that you were not going to be able to benefit from it. So, but
yeah.
the way, right. So as I mentioned earlier, we structure it a little bit differently to where your family trust will be the beneficiary. So the money will flow into the family anyways.
Mhm.
Um, some people that are in like joint ventures and partnerships, instead of them using that strategy where the family trust is a beneficiary, they'll make themselves a beneficiary. So everyone's structure is a little bit different. So your structure might have to be that way.
Now, when it comes to like funnel, I guess funneling my business account through the trust, if it's a business account, would it have to go through a business trust, or it just depends on what's better structure for me?
Okay, I need some clarity. So your business has a business account, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what is the question? Is the question that is what is the question exactly? Is the question that your business trust will have a business account as well? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So every single entity has its own account. You don't want to commingle funds. So yes, the business trust will have its own account that is separate from your current business.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
That makes
welcome.
sense. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
And then I had another one. Now, I don't know if this is a type of trust, a spendthrift trust. Is that something that is real?
Yeah, a spendthrift trust is real. So they just label it that way because the provisions and bylaws are spendthrift provisions and bylaws. So with the trust that we have spendthrift provisions inside
Okay.
of the bylaws. And
Inside
so
the what?
inside of the bylaws.
Bylaws. Okay.
And so spendthrift, what that is for you to be able to put terms and conditions in place so that the beneficiaries do not dissipate the wealth. So they will spend the money down to zero if you let them. So you don't want to allow that. That's why you are establishing spendthrift provisions inside of the trust. You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry. Okay, so that's something that I would control and manage on what can be distributed monthly, yearly, or later down the road.
Absolutely, 100%, as long as you're the trustee, yes.
And there's no, and that's not something that I can use every day.
What do you mean?
So that's not something that you can use like for daily purchases. That spend trust to withdraw from there.
So, the, um, so, trust expenses, it depends, right? It depends on what the purchases are. So, and it depends on the type of trust that it is, and it also depends on if it's business or personal. And inside of the actual trust indenture, you want to spell out what the operating expenses and what the administrative expenses are going to be. So, will you spend from the trust every day? It is possible. It depends. So that's why you putting the necessary things and customizing your trust contract is so important so that you're able to spell out all of those expenses in the contract before you finalize your trust.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. All right. That's good to know then. I was very confused by another individual, how they were explaining it to me. So that just gave me some clarity on how that works. Thank you.
You're welcome, Angelica. All right. And I think there was somebody said, how are the bylaws written? So they just have articles and sections and they're labeled. So purpose and intent is one of the labels. Copies as original is one of the labels. Beneficiaries, trustee powers. So within those bylaws, you have an article and you have a section for every article. Any other final questions or concerns? If not, we are going to wrap it up for today.
I just have, I think maybe two questions. You just
Okay.
mentioned trustee powers. Well, what
Uh-huh.
exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, so trustee powers are a list of all the powers that the trustee is able to perform within the trust organization. So, for example, you opening up bank accounts, you liquidating assets, you acquiring assets, you appointing a successor trustee. Those are all trustee powers. So everything is spelled out in the contract, and that's what you want.
Okay. And is that something that you and the person that's helping you construct the trust come up with, or
Yeah.
because I'm not
So
exactly sure.
yeah, so we provide you with the templates, and inside of the templates, we already have all of the trustee powers spelled out. And so you can add anything that you feel is missing. So for example, let's just say that you're like big into crypto, right? So inside of there, it doesn't mention crypto. So you're gonna put the trustees able to acquire cryptocurrency at any point in time, right?
And my second and final question goes back to what I was asking before about in the infinitesimal chance that a grantor passes away, whatever. And you said that if the banking institution may need like a death certificate, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so a death certificate is public records. You can go get anyone's death
Oh,
certificate. Marriage
okay, cool.
certificates are public records. Your deed to your house is public records. Anybody can go get your
Okay.
deed.
Okay, cool. Because I thought maybe you had to go through like some sort of, I don't know, some legal process in order to get it. But if it's public record, then that's different.
It is. You get it right off the internet.
Cool. Okay. Thank you so much, Christina. I appreciate your help.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you to
I have
everyone.
one final question. One final question.
Yes,
I'm so sorry. This is
it's
about the
okay.
grantor. The grantor doesn't have any power, correct? The only thing is that they're
So,
going to be insured, correct? Or am I
yeah.
incorrect in that?
No. So if it's an irrevocable trust, then the grantor has no power and no control.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, guys. So I just want you guys to take action on the information that I provided you guys with tonight because I see it so many times where people, they'll just go ahead and take it all in, but then they'll stay on the fence or they'll have what we call analysis paralysis, where they're like scared to move forward and take that leap of faith. But tomorrow is not promised, right? And so you actually getting your affairs in order, you actually setting up this trust estate now while you're living is going to not only impact your life, but it's going to impact the lives of your children and your children's children and the many generations to come, because now you're going to be changing the trajectory of their life because you're going to be raising them to take over after you, right? So you're raising them as beneficiaries and trustees now versus whatever you were already doing, right? Because our children, they can't take over our jobs and our 9 to 5, but they can take over this trust legacy that you're actually creating now while you're living. So with that being said, thank you for attending this webinar tonight and staying throughout the whole entire webinar. Once again, the website is wealthytrustee.com. So you guys can go ahead and enjoy 20% off using the discount code TRUST20 in the next 24 hours. And I'm looking forward to helping you guys through this journey. So thank you so much, everyone. You guys have a good night, and I'll see you guys soon.
Okay,
Thank
you
you. Have a
You
too.
great
too.
night.
Give thanks.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye
Bye.
now.
Bye bye.